And talk to the great Chris Cotillo of Mass Live, who joins us here on the Christian Arcand Show. Chris, great to have you back. How you feeling tonight?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing great. Now, the Red Sox get basically the cheapest win of all time with that home run. Ceddanne Rafaela made me immediately think of Nick Green, but I guess Lorenzo Cain had an even shorter one than that, right? Is that right? Does he have the shortest one in the StatCast era for sure, but is that the shortest one ever?
It's the shortest walk-off of the StatCast era, I guess. The Red Sox provided that stat. It is the shortest Red Sox home run of the StatCast era, which is now about to celebrate its 10th birthday. Very exciting for everybody at the league office. So, it is, I think, the worst really great win in Red Sox history, or recent Red Sox history, because if you watch the game, it was everything that has kind of crippled this team so far. Plus, for, many times, something we haven't seen a lot, timely hitting, clutch hitting. Rafaela's been hot with some pull-side power. He got lucky on that one, obviously, with the way it went. He put the ball in play, good things happen. So they were able to fly to New York tonight, happy, off day tomorrow, and get ready for a big series. But they needed it. They needed a break. They needed one to go their way, and it did.
Yeah, it certainly did. And what was most interesting about it, I thought, was that some of the big issues with this team did rear their head, as you said. Like the starting pitcher barely made it out of the first inning again without getting tattooed. Misplays in the field, misplays on the base path. All of these things that have amounted to a lot of one-run losses and a very frustrating season so far. They saw him here, but if you just add that one little thing of situational hitting or, manufacturing a run here and there when you need one, it makes such a big difference, doesn't it?
It does, and we've seen that, time and time again. And look, there were stretches tonight where they did not cash in. They're in the eighth, I think. They had, a runner on second,
yep.
Or they had the go-ahead run on third with one out and didn't get them across. Obviously, that doesn't matter. It's just been, kind of a theme of the season, along with the pitching struggles. You saw a couple of guys today who have been really, really good for them, give up runs in what were supposed to be shutdown innings. Bernardino, who, as my colleague Chris Smith tweeted, pitching for the 100th time in the season, even though it's the 64th game. He gave up a run. Greg Weissert, who had been really, really good. Those guys have not been the issue, but, they gave up runs today, weren't able to shut it down. Cooper Criswell comes in, pitches well, and Rafaela ends it there at the homer.
It was nice to see him get a win, but they still lost the series, and this has still been an absolutely brutal stretch here, Chris. Did something almost happen here? Like, if they had lost this game, do you think there would have been some kind of reaction to that? Do you think some kind of something would have happened?
No, I thought that last week. I tweeted and said it wasn't informed, and it wasn't, that I thought a shakeup could come before they get to Atlanta. I think it's tough to really shake anything up in a big way before you play the Yankees. That's kind of enough pressure in and of itself. They're 15 games above 500 as they take the field tonight. First time playing them, obviously. Cora talked about it being a perfect off day tomorrow to rest the, bullpen, rest the pitching staff, all that stuff. So, that's important. They'll take advantage of that. And then they have 3 big games and come right back here. They play Tampa. They play New York again. So, I think we all think Roman Anthony's going to be up in the next couple of weeks. It really could be any day. We were talking on our podcast, the Fenway Rundown, by the way, the other day that, I think the West Coast trip makes a lot of sense. They've done that with big-time prospects in the past, Benintendi, Devers, Bogarts, obviously different eras and different GMs, but that could be a way to do it. So, of course, as soon as Roman Anthony starts knocking Rafaela homers 3 times in 3 games there, and he'd be the guy who'd probably take the brunt of the time from. But, at this point, I was working on a story in the middle of that game, 5 ways the Red Sox could shake things up today. You can't really run that story after a walk-off win, so we'll wait till next week at some point, probably. But
don't worry, you'll be able to run it very soon. I'm sure. Just wait a couple of days.
Think, I think big picture. There's going to be decisions made. I mean, Giolito, to me, short leash in the rotation. Same with Bayo. I think they have to really look at the future of Campbell and maybe moving him back down to AAA. I think in a twist of irony, you could see Roman Anthony come up and Christian Campbell go down, which would be not how we thought the big 3 would progress. But, it's getting to a point where they need to make these changes. Maybe if they sweep in the Bronx this weekend somehow, those will be kind of staved off for a little bit. But I think, overall, it's a very disappointing, underperforming team. Everybody there knows it. And at some point, something's going to give. You can't just be, rolling the balls out and hoping it flips around. Cora alluded to that last night, and I agree with him.
Yeah, on the subject of the way that these young players and the rookies in the big three are progressing or sort of getting used, there was a lot of talk about Roman Anthony from Craig Breslow, I believe it was, who said that we don't want to call him up until we know for sure we can have him play him every day and getting regular at-bats. Meanwhile, Marcelo Meyer is up here not playing every day and was sitting out for 2 straight games because of a lefty platoon. Is the message is it different for different players, or is it maybe something that's is there parts of the message getting lost in translation between the front office and the dugout?
When you have guys like Abraham Toro and Romy Gonzalez, you have to get those bats into the lineup.
Right,
what do you not under? These guys are, Mantle and Maris, basically. So, no, I mean, look, it's just, I think, at times we've seen, convenient messaging on one day that doesn't exactly line up with what happens the next day. That's kind of a trademark of the Red Sox for the last few years. I'm sure most professional sports organizations, part of it. The Cora at least has been consistent of not playing, really young, talented left-handed hitters against left-handed starters. We've seen it with, Devers really early in his career. Eduardo Nunez did start in the World Series. People forget that. We've seen, obviously it happened with Duran later on, and then Casas in the last couple of years, Willie Abreu still Casas this year, even before he got hurt. And so I'm not surprised that they're trying to kind of wean Meyer in that way. Romy Gonzalez did hit lefties well last year. Toro has been okay. So, I think that's kind of part of, to me, the urgency of where they are right now is that, is it good for Marcelo Meyer's long-term development to have him in there every day and, learn these things on the fly? Of course. But when you are 4 games, 5 games, almost 6 games under 500, you have to put the best lineup out there. And if Abraham Toro and Romy Gonzalez represent that over Meyer on that given day with the roster you have, it's not like they are chasing wins.
Right.
And so that's what it is. And so, there's a ton of data that goes into it. These things have been predetermined for a while. Cora has the lineup for, next week against the Rays already made up, I'm sure, based on who's pitching and all that. So it's I think a little bit of the urgency. If they were 15 games above 500, will we see Meyer playing, every day against lefties? Probably, but it's just where they are.
We're talking with Chris Cotillo from Mass Live. Chris, what did you make of not just yesterday, but I thought on Monday he sounded very sort of down and even a little despondent. Yesterday, those comments were all over the place. I heard him today, and he talked for about 9-10 minutes, which is like 7 minutes longer than he usually talks after these games, and it seemed like he had a lot to say. What do you make of his tone and tenor over the previous 2 games into today and sort of where Alex Cora is at mentally with this team? It seems like he's kind of near the end of his rope.
Yeah, I would say 2 things. Number one, it takes a lot for him to get there publicly. Yeah. He is not come off the field and just kind of, rip them emotionally based on 1 bad loss or 2 or 3 or a bad week. I wrote a column kind of ripping him for the fact that they seem too content with these moral victories for a while. And I think, that's something he said, he's kind of gotten away from the last couple of weeks. The other thing I'd say is he definitely picks his spots. Ian Brown asked the first question last night about chances with runners in scoring position, all that. And Cora didn't even answer the question because he had, and I don't mean this in a bad way, but his script ready of chances. I don't care about that. We did this, and this. They're not getting better. There's a point in a certain game at a certain time where, and we've seen this, throughout different points of his managerial tenure, when things pile up, he gets to a point where he, changes the message, and it's totally purposeful. It's totally to send a message to the group. It's totally a rattle the cage type thing, and it takes him a while to get there. And so he picks a spot. So I think it was meaningful, purposeful. Today he was in a very good mood, obviously, both before the game and after, despite, some fireworks with the Angels on the field pregame. But is a little performative at times, I think. But it's a strategy he's used the whole time. You talked about today how he called a team meeting in 2018 when they were like 18-2 because they played a sloppy game and wanted to rattle their cage, and not knowing what team meetings, what things are being said behind the scenes. That's kind of all we get from a fiery Cora perspective. And I think last night, he just showed that especially the defense irritates him as a guy who is such a good defender and preaches that and takes pride in it, that it's really kind of, he's up to his ears with that.
Chris, I know that John Henry refused to talk to you in Kansas City, which I still haven't forgiven him for that. But despite that, do you have any sense of how, maybe not Henry, but ownership in general, like that wing of the building, do you have any sense of how they're reacting to all of this and where they sort of stand with this team so far this year?
No, and I tweeted a couple weeks ago that I think generally those guys have been more present, especially in spring training around April, than I had seen in the last 4 or 5 years. Henry was, not saying anything on the record or meaningful, but mingling with reporters and players that day in spring training. He was in Texas for opening day. He was there in Kansas City, obviously. He, very demonstratively attended the press conferences of Crochet and Campbell. You'd see him here and there in the elevator at Fenway. Sam Kennedy was out and about talking more. As soon as it, goes down the tubes, I think you see them kind of recoil back into the corner offices over there. And it's been something that, has been consistent where you don't see these people pop up. I know Sam does hits with Nesson and you guys and, gives the state of the team. The thing here is that, Cora and ownership have a very tight relationship, no matter if it's, Dombrowski, Breslow, Bloom, Arcand or Cotillo in the front office, running the team. And so I think that's, above all, along with the contract, why Cora is ultimately, safe. And Cora has a very, very strong relationship with Kennedy, very strong relationship with Warner and Henry that kind of transcends whoever is the middle manager in the CBO chair. So I'm sure they're involved. It's always, I've said this now for almost my entire time covering this team. They complain a lot about how fans don't think they're invested, especially when things are going poorly, yet they do nothing to show the fans that they are in terms of front-facing, forward-facing gestures. I think Henry going to Kansas City actually was the opposite of that. He was urgent, all that. But, tough to know what they're thinking right now. They can't be happy. And that's obvious.
They may be considering Arcand and Cotillo to run the team from here on out. And I think that if
we only get 4-year tenures and then we're out no matter what.
That's right. I think you can handle the baseball stuff and I'll take care of the rest. I think that's a pretty good way to split the responsibilities there. Before we let you go, Chris, this team obviously has had a frustrating season, especially in the last couple of weeks. Have you noticed maybe a change in the demeanor of some of these players and the vibe in the clubhouse, that type of thing? Is the reality of where this season may be going sort of setting in with this group?
Yeah, it's a downcast kind of dour environment. It has been for the last couple of weeks. Obviously, not this afternoon as music was blaring in the clubhouse and they were happy about the win and all that. I go back to, and I've said this 1,000 times now on various platforms about how I feel about the whole Devers thing from the jump. I think there's nuance. I think that the team deserves some blame. I think he deserves some blame. I think the team could have handled it better, been better communicators. I think he could have been, I see all that. What I think is inarguable is that whole thing did weigh on them for a little while. The clubhouse was tight. The clubhouse was kind of ready to go and kind of touchy, especially with things that were being, put out there about the team for a while. That was a big thing in May where, it felt like the outside noise had definitely creeped in.
Yeah.
How that affects the play on the field, none of us can ever quantify. But I think that was definitely the case. It's just something that there is a feeling that, things are not right. And I think right after that to have, the leader, the guy that you are going to for the big picture voice, the guy who's going to kind of, take you through the tough times and Bregman go down, any player will tell you, when they're hurt, it's like being a ghost. They feel like they can't lead in the same way. And I think that's the case. So, winning cures everything. They rip off, 7 in a row here. I'm sure the vibes will be better and things will turn around. But to this point, something's been off. I think that's kind of inarguable.
Yeah, I agree with you there. And just real quick, just because you mentioned it, and I have sort of wondered this, giving some blame to the team for the Devers situation and the communication. What exactly do you mean by that? Did he get completely blindsided? It's hard to imagine that they wouldn't have, at the very least, put some feelers out there about, hey, we're thinking of signing this guy. It was in the newspaper. It's not like the interest in him was not reported on. Like, what really was their crime here?
Yeah, I've been assured that they kind of told Devers that the Arenado and Bregman stuff was BS. Huh. And I also think you have to look at Fenway Fest and Alex Cora's time on Nesson as one of the great smoke screens of all time, where he went out of his way to say Alex Bregman could be a Gold Glove second baseman. That sounds like a guy who wants Alex Bregman to be his second baseman, and that never materialized. And weirdly, Jeff Passan, who never gets anything wrong, tweeted within seconds of the Bregman deal, breaking that late night during spring training, Alex Bregman's expected to be the second baseman for the Red Sox. And then they changed their mind, and I think that probably was the plan the entire time. They sat Raffy down in between when they signed Bregman and when he talked to us in that famous bench scrum. And I don't blame him for being irritated about that. And I think, the communication's been weird about it the whole time. Again, there's nuance here. I think both sides take some blame and deserve it. But again, the cloud lingers.
Yeah, it's about as the same deal with Christian Campbell to first base over the weekend. They changed their mind on that one too. They changed their mind a lot, it seems like.
Well, Abraham Toro lit the world on fire. So
there you go. Chris Cotillo, Mass Live. Great to talk with you as always. Don't be a stranger. All right.
Sounds good. Thanks.
All right.